Alexia wants me to let you know that she's selling Girl Scout cookies. Right after our talk last week on diet.
I was going to say what we eat half.
So Alexia will be out there if you want to buy some Girl Scout cookies. All kinds of girls out there selling them now. They just started. So let's support the ones within our church, okay? Got a message for you. Let me open with a prayer. Jesus, this is your church. These are your people. You've just entrusted them to us, to love them, to care for them, to take care of them, to be a family. And Jesus, that's what we want to be. We want to represent you well, Jesus. And so I just pray that this morning you would give us incredible ears to hear what you have to say. I doubt that there's anybody in this room that doesn't need to hear what your word has to say. So God, give us ears to hear. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Doing a series on hope. First one was hope of healing. We did the hope on addiction. I am so excited to hear some of the stories that I'm hearing from you people. Really encouraging that you're doing. There's just something about admitting it that creates accountability. And last week we talked about losing weight. And I want to encourage you again on that one. All week long, I was so worried that I'd weigh in and not lose anything. And I was thinking about it all week long. Now, before that, who's going to know whether I gained or didn't. There's just something about accountability. So when I went to weigh in this morning, I lost half a pound. Now wait a minute. It's really a pound because I got heavier shoes on. But that might take away from, because I have less money in my wallet too. So that could be that it took away from. But I want to encourage you people now. I know that some of you probably didn't lose weight this week. Some of you, don't stop. Don't stop. I want to encourage you to go in there and weigh yourself. There's just something about it. And if you haven't done it before, last week, any of the message, you want to be a part of it, please do it. Please consider doing it, okay? I can promise you that if you stick to it a little bit, it'll start getting easier and easier. Your stomach will start shrinking a little bit. I'm proud of my son that in Texas that went on a diet. Now, he lost 9 pounds in 1 week. In 1 week alone, sometimes it's a little easier to lose it when you got more of it. But he did lose 9 in 1 week, and it was kind of like, wow, that's encouraging to me. So I want to encourage you people to keep on doing that, okay? This morning, I want to give you hope again. I want to give you hope for broken relationships, okay? I'm going to ask you, how many of you have a family member that you just don't get along with? Raise your hand. Always folks. How many of you have a coworker that you just don't get along with? Oh, not that many. How many of you have a neighbor that you don't get along with? Okay. Well, she's sitting right next to you. Come on. I know that we all have somebody that there's a broken relationship, and I know this, because I've dealt with it too many times. It's always their fault. Always their fault. And it really is. But then if I talk to them, it's your fault. And it really is. It's kind of like marriage counseling. Mark, have you ever counseled anybody where it was one-sided and it was all one person's fault and never the other person's fault?
Just our own.
Right now, right? There's always two sides to everything. Always is. But we always just look at that other person. And you can come up with an abundance of reasons why you shouldn't have to work on that relationship. Why should you? Why should you? This is the part I want you to hear this morning now. You should because you can. Because you have the incredible ability, the incredible power to fix that relationship. You have the capacity to do that. And I want you to hear this now. There is hope. There is hope. There's no reason that that relationship should still remain broken forever. No reason. No reason. So I want you to really listen now. Some of these verses are going to be really hard. A lot of them are from Jesus, but I want you to hear them, because what I want you to hear is that Jesus is going to give us the power to do it. Let's look at Luke chapter 6. Here's what Jesus himself said. But I tell you who hear me, those of you that are listening right now, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. Now leave it up there. Why would Jesus say that? Love your enemies. Oh my gosh. If there's someone out there that you know doesn't like you, in fact, they've even said it to your face, I can't stand you. And you say, oh, feelings are mutual. Why would Jesus say, love them, if you weren't capable of loving them? He wouldn't tell you, love your enemy, if you're not capable of loving your enemy. Because here's what you have to realize, chances are, they're not capable of it. If they don't know Jesus, they are not capable of that. But you are. You are. You have the power to mend a broken relationship. Let's listen to Jesus again. Chapter 6, verse 32. Jesus said, if you love those that love you, what credit is that to you? If you just love the people that love you back, what credit is that? It said, even sinners love those that love them. Even people that don't know God still love people that love them. So you're no different then. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expect to be repaid in full. But you love your enemies. Do good to them. Lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great. And then you will be sons of the Most High. Because He is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful just as your Father is merciful. We have to be different than the world does. In order for Christianity to be recognized as something powerful, we have to be different. And boy, there is no better way to be different than to love those that don't love you, that are upset with you about something. And I know people that have broken relationships, that have been broken relationships I have in my own family, that have been broken for years. And I'm sure if they ever got together and discussed it, they'd have a hard time remembering why they were mad at one another. But they still are. They carry that grudge. And what Jesus is saying is, you have the power. He has given you the power to mend that relationship. Now, what is it? Well, I want you to be careful of now. Remember what I said. It's easy to look at the other person and see what they did wrong. Always easier to see what they did wrong. Always easier. So Jesus has something to say about that too. Let's look at Matthew chapter 7. When you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention, why do you? And pay no attention to the plank in your own eye. How can you say to your brother, take that speck out of your eye when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the plank out of your own eye, then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Now, you all have done this. You all know where there's relationships that are broken. And when you talk to one person, oh, they can just point out everything that other person did. But if you point out something they did, oh, they don't want to hear that. They do not want to hear that. Right away, it's like, I didn't do anything. I didn't do it. It's their fault. It's their fault. It's always their fault. Always. And then when I turn around and talk to the other person, it's always their fault. That's not what Jesus is talking about. He's not talking about fault. Fault is irrelevant. It's irrelevant. You're to love your enemies. Not just those that, not just, I mean, is a family member really an enemy? It's just somebody you don't get along with now. Jesus is telling us you're even to love your enemy. You're even to give to them when they ask for something. If they want to borrow your lawnmower and you give it to them and you don't get it back, you don't have to hold a grudge on that even. Holy smokes. How many of you guys have loaned tools to a neighbor and never got it back? How do we do that? How do we do that? How are we capable of doing that? Let's look at people that did do it. Let's look at people that did do it, okay? Let's look at Luke chapter 22. Jesus said, this is when he's hanging on the cross, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. And they divided up his clothes by casting lots. It was Jesus, though. I've told you the story so many times. They literally hit him so many times they knocked the beard off. They tore the beard off of his face. Okay? His body was so wrecked that there was no muscle left to his body. It was just shredded. He's hanging up on a cross now, and he's telling them, God, forgive them. And we can't forgive somebody because they didn't return a tool. And we can't forgive somebody because they said something behind our back. And we can't forgive them. And here's Jesus telling God, forgive them because they just beat the snot out of him. So, if Jesus can do it, that's why he's asking us to do it. Let's look at another one here. Let's look at Acts chapter 7. This is Stephen. Okay? Stephen is being killed. Okay? Then he fell on his knees and cried out, Lord, do not hold this sin against them. When he had said this, he fell asleep as they were stoning him to death. Now here's what stoning is, okay? Stoning is a death penalty. That's where you're down on your knees, and those that have given you a death penalty all take rocks and continue hitting you with rocks until you die. That's what stoning is. Okay? And here's Stephen now. It's not Jesus, this is Stephen saying, don't hold this sin against them. Oh my goodness. Could you do that? You are capable of doing that. Jesus did it, so we can look like, yeah, but that was Jesus. Well, this is Stephen. Stephen's just a guy like you and I. Just a regular guy. He did it. We are capable of forgiving. We have the power to do that. You have the power to mend a relationship. Let's look now at Romans chapter 12, 14. This is Paul says, bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Oh, do we love to curse those that did us wrong? And he's saying, no, don't, pray for them instead. Pray for them. Bless them. Do good to them. That's what blessing is. Put a blessing on them. Let's look at 1 Corinthians. Same thing. We work hard with our hands, Paul said. But when we are cursed, we bless. When we are persecuted, we endure it. Paul said we and the rest of his disciples said, when they persecute us, we just accept it. We don't retaliate. In fact, we come back with a blessing. We bless a curse with a blessing. We bless a broken relationship with a blessing. Oh my goodness. Now, I want you to think, what would happen if the person that you don't get along with right now, okay, whoever it is, a family member or a neighbor that you don't get along with, all of a sudden came to you and said, Dave, I am so sorry. I was wrong. I'm wrong. I'm wrong. We're probably both wrong. We're probably both wrong with all this, but I just want you to know that I am sorry, and I would hope that God blesses your life. Would you better turn back around and say, well, I'm not going to forgive you? What would you do? Would your heart not be kind of touched a little bit? Why do we do that? Why do we do that? And if they don't accept it, that's up to them. And if they're not a Christian, if you have a neighbor that's not a Christian, don't even expect it. They're not capable of it. If they were to forgive you, they're doing it from their own power and not from the power of God because they don't have the Spirit of God. So if they do forgive you, it's on their own accord. You have the Spirit of God in you. You have much more power than they have. Much more power than they have. Continue listening here. Continue listening, okay? We need to forgive just like Jesus did, like he told us. Let's look at Ephesians chapter 4. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as Christ forgave you. Okay? Now here's what we all have to realize. You have been forgiven of every sin that you've ever committed and every sin that you're still going to commit. You've been forgiven. Did you do anything to warrant that? No. No. God forgave you when you still weren't even looking at him. He forgave you. So if God can forgive you, if Jesus can forgive you, then he's telling us we need to do the same thing. Look at Colossians, it says the same thing, 3:13. Bear with each other and forgive whatever grievances you may have against one another. Forgive as the Lord forgave you, whatever grievances there are. Whatever it is, forgive them. Forgive them. Let's look at 1 Peter. I love this one. Jesus said, when they hurled insults at him, he did not retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. Don't worry about retaliation. God is the perfect judge. If somebody did you wrong, and you continue to reach out and they don't accept it, they'll be judged for that. But don't you be judged. Don't you be judged. Now, here's the harsh ones now. This is the two that I want you to listen to. We're even going to close in these two. You can believe that. I want you to hear this now, okay? Let's look. 1 John. Anyone who claims to be in the light. I'm a Christian. How many of you here are Christians? Raise your hand. Okay, you're all making that claim. You're all making that claim. But hates his brother, then you're still in darkness. Put your hand down. Put your hand down. If you put your hand down, I'm a Christian, but you still hate somebody, put your hand down. Put your hand down. You're still in darkness. You're still in darkness. Whoever loves his brother lives in the light, and there's nothing in him to make him stumble. But whoever hates his brother is in darkness and walks around in darkness. He does not know where he's going because darkness has blinded him. You're blinded if you still have hatred towards somebody. If you have a family member that you still hate, that you resent, that you have a grudge against, you are blinded. You're in darkness. You're dark. The enemy has you exactly where he wants you. He has you exactly where he wants you. Well, let's look at one more. 1 John chapter 4. It says this. If anyone says, I love God, yet hates his brother, he's a liar. Put your hand up if you're a Christian. Don't. Put your hand up. Do you hate somebody and you keep your hand up? Jesus just called you a liar. He just called you a liar. Oh, do you want God to call you a liar? For anyone who does not love his brother whom he has seen cannot love God whom he has not seen. These are tough words. These are tough words, but this is the hope, people. You have the power. You have the power to do something about it. And if you don't do anything about it, God is not happy with you. And there's going to be a piece of you, there's going to be a piece of your life, a piece of your walk with God that's going to be empty. That's going to be still darkness. It's kind of like when you're still in sin, if there's a sin that still has a hold of you, there's a separation between you and God. As much as you want to be close to him, there's a separation right there because there's sin between you and God. And it's that same thing here now, if there's, especially a brother, especially a family member, that you are not mending that relationship with, there's a darkness in your life. There's something in your life that still isn't fulfilled. But you have the power to do something about it. Just like as Christians, when we talk about work, if you have an addiction, you have the power God has given you, and He's given it to you through organizations like AA and NA. He's given it to you by people within our church that are working the program, that are willing to reach out with you and bring you there. If you have a weight problem, He's given you the power. All you got to do is be with the rest of us to hold one another accountable. And if you have a broken relationship, He's given you the power to go out and tell that person that you're sorry. I am certain of this. I'm certain of this. Whether they're a Christian or not a Christian. If you were to go to them today and say, you know, it's my fault, it's both of our faults, I just want you to know that I'm sorry that our relationship has gotten this bad. I just want you to know I'm sorry. I wish it wasn't like this, and I apologize. I'm convinced that that person will not accept it. Even if they don't know the Lord. If they do know the Lord, I am convinced that their spirit will reach out to your spirit. It'll be a godly thing. It'll be a godly thing. It'll be like yours, like Jesus says, when you don't know how to pray, don't worry, because the Spirit within you will pray words to God for you. It's kind of like if you are willing to reach out to that person, your spirit will reach out to that spirit, and that spirit will reach back. You have the power to do that. Here's the sad thing. It's just like, for those that had addictions, a whole bunch didn't do anything about it. For those that have weight, a whole bunch aren't going to do anything about it. For those that have broken relationships, a whole bunch are not going to do anything about it. You're going to walk out and say, good message. And then you're not going to do anything. You're not going to do anything. A whole bunch of you. Yeah.
But if you've already done that, and
Wasn't accepted.
and yeah, but you keep on trying, you try twice, you try 3 times, and then you're continuing to be hurt by that because they're not accepting it.
But again, that's their problem. You did what God asked you to do.
So how long do you keep getting hurt?
I don't know that I can answer that. We're good. You're going to get some answers next week. You're going to get some of that answers next week when we look at what love is. When love says that it keeps no record of wrongdoings. It says, I don't keep any. Love, real love does not keep record of wrongdoings. You're keeping a record. And what God is saying is real love doesn't keep a record. You just keep loving. I know it's hard. Don't get me wrong. It's hard. When they don't accept it, holy smokes, that's hard. And you'd almost have to be perfect like Jesus to keep on doing it. But the fact that you did it once, God, well done.
I'm going through that right now, and I totally agree with him. I have a family member that I just,
Your mom's right outside.
no. But a good friend of mine told me that I have to pray for that person. And that was the hardest thing. And but I went up to them and I told I made an amends, and I told them that I love them and I'm sorry, but the thing is that you're powerless over other people and what they do, and you just gotta accept them for who they are, but you just gotta.
You work the 12-step program.
Man,
you know that in the 12-step program, that's one of the steps, that you have to go to the people that you hurt.
But you have to surrender and give it to God, and let God do it, and just let Him do it. But as long as you try. But I'm
not going to say there's perfect results of all this. All I'm telling you is don't just not do anything. Because if you choose not to do anything, then this is what God is saying. Then you don't even know God. Then you don't even know God. Because Jesus Himself said, love them. Continue to love them. Now, what does that love mean? It's good. What the questions you're asking will be answered a little bit next week, okay, part 2. Where we're going to get into what love. It's not going to be about agape. It's going to be what the Bible says about love. Okay? And the Bible doesn't tell us to do anything that we're not capable of doing. Jesus wouldn't ask us to do something that we're not capable of doing. We are capable of it. I mean, look at here's Stephen, for his faith, being stoned to death. Now, a lot of us would sit here and say, oh, no way would I be stoned to death with my faith. You don't know that. You don't know that until your faith is tested what you're capable of doing. You might surprise yourself what you're capable of doing. But you got to start. You got to start with it somewhere. And so I'm just hoping that there's enough of you out there that are willing to start. And now this is what I want to start doing now with this whole Hope series. I want to start hearing it. And I know that it's a little scary sometimes. Well, let me just ask, for those of you that admitted that you have some issues with drugs or alcohol, how are you doing? What hope is there? If nobody can raise their hand and say I'm doing better, then we are just wasting our time. We're wasting our time.
No,
Might as well stay home.
We're never wasting your time.
Well, I'm being cynical, of course. But is there anybody? I'd love to hear a success story. I'd love to hear a success story. Is there anybody out there that can stand up and say, I am doing better. I'm doing better. Anybody?
I'm doing better. Just got my 7-year chip.
I wish I'd have been there yesterday to celebrate it with you. Anybody here that's brand new to it all? That's doing better.
I'm doing better. Well, my wife and I were trying to stop and inspire, but we're doing better.
Can I just share something with you? You don't mind if I share?
Yeah, it's going to be away.
Soledad's coming home from work Friday. Gets off on Delamo Boulevard, has the green light coming around in a company vehicle. It's those company vehicles that came in and hit her right in her car. It's got, oh my gosh, a car that just got fixed. Not her fault. She calls me, couldn't get a hold of anybody, and I'm babysitting and can get to her and all that, so I'm trying to give her as much information as I can. She came home, and the temptation to drink was, I bet you, incredible, wasn't it?
It multiplied.
Did you?
It's automatic.
Did you have a drink?
No, we didn't.
Yeah.
That's a success story. Are you gonna succeed every single time? No way of knowing that. Day by day. No way of knowing that. No way of knowing that. Anybody else? Anybody else that has a success story?
I've been doing a lot better actually, and I feel happier at work and feel like I have the energy for my just continue and feel great.
Wow. You've noticed a difference? Wow. Your kids aren't here. I'd ask them to. I'm okay. All right. Cool. Anybody else? Anybody else? Any other successes in that area?
I have a success story actually related to what we talked about today. Liz is actually my second wife, and I have a son with my first wife. And when Liz and I first met, she had come over to my house one time, and I was on the phone with my ex. And we were just screaming and yelling at each other, and and my face is red. And Liz says to my mom, she's like, "Wow, this is a really bad fight." And my mom's like, "Oh no, this is a mellow one." And we would just have these screaming, raging arguments. And then one day I'm like, you know what? Why am I so angry? What did she do to me? We were married, it didn't work out. What's the big deal? So I said, you know what? Just forgive her for everything. I didn't say anything to her. I just whatever. And seriously, from that moment on, the intensity level of our conversation just dropped. And it was, I won't say it was completely smooth sailing after that, but it really, things got a lot better. We got along better. We were able to work together more for our son. So, it does work to just forgive.
Success story. What else before I move on to the next one?
I lost a pound.
Oh, that's what I was gonna go to. That's what I was gonna go to. All right. Feels good,
Can I
doesn't it,
tell
though,
them
huh?
my weight didn't get labeled?
Now, some of you haven't weighed in yet, but I'm just curious, how many of you that did weigh in feel good about yourself this week, that you actually were doing something as a result of that, that you, I mean you were perfect, but you succeeded in some way?
Yeah.
So just raise your hand if you did. All right, cool. Then I want to encourage you, okay? Liz is going to be back there again, okay? I've already weighed in, Liz has already weighed in. Go in and wait. Don't get, because you, like, if it hadn't worked the first time, you don't give up.
Yeah.
That's what Christians don't do. They don't give up. It's kind of like when Joe was working the program, it doesn't mean that every time you're a success. You make it and you fall. You make it, you fall. That's just human nature, but you don't give up, especially as a Christian. You keep on keeping on.
Amen.
So, love your story. Love your story, Eric. I would love to hear those kind of stories in the weeks to come. I would love to hear those kind of stories in the weeks to come. That you built, you mended relationships. Because you had the power within you to do that. If you weren't a Christian, would you have done that? Probably not. You'd have probably shot her, right? But you probably deserve that. So because you're a Christian, you have that kind of power in you, okay? So really want to encourage you now to consider the hope that is in you. The hope that you can mend relationships. Have that power. I'm going to ask the worship team to come up. Now, who gives you that power? It's the Spirit that gives you that power. And a lot of times we have to cry out to that Spirit. Like if you're going to your neighbor, or you're going to that person, man, your heart is going to be pumping like crazy. When you're getting ready to go over to talk to that person, it's not going to just, you're not just going to nonchalantly do it. You're going to be walking over going, oh, this is going to be hard. This is going to be really difficult. It's the Spirit of God that gives you that power. That gives you, it says, remember I've said this too many times to you, you do not have a spirit of timidity in you. You have a spirit of what? A power. You have a spirit of power in you, not timidity. You can do it. So I'm just going to ask that you would come to the cross and just say, Jesus, give me that power. Give me the desire. Give me the power. Give me the guts to go up and ask for forgiveness. Just to apologize. That's all you have to do. Don't worry about what they do. You have no control over what they do. It's what you do that Jesus is asking. So let's worship. And remember, this cross represents Jesus.